Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Mi nombre es Adriana Guerrido. Soy la directora nacional de Didáscalos Argentina. And the truth is that it is an honor and a pleasure to be able to share with you this topic that is so important, that of grief in children. This topic that is so important, that of grief in children. I am very grateful for the participation that you have allowed me. Children count, the children's ministry counts. So, of course, I am very grateful to all of you. Well, and we are going to be talking about grief in children. Grief in children. Bereavement is a complex process involving a person's reaction to the death of a loved one. It is characterized by a set of psychological, biological, and social phenomena that manifest themselves after the affective loss. Grief is an adaptive process that is elaborated over time, and each individual needs a variable for recovery. Understanding of death in childhood. The understanding of death in children is a gradual process that develops throughout infancy until the age of 3 or 4. 3 or 4 years of age. Children are relatively ignorant of the meaning of death and do not consider it as something definitive, and often confuse it with death, and often confuse it with sleep. At 4 to 7 years, death remains an irreversible temporary event. Children may believe that the dead have feelings and biological functions by asking, for example, how the deceased eats or goes to the bathroom. They may also experience magical thoughts, believing that a bad thought of theirs caused the death. 5 to 10 years old. Death is extended as final and irreversible, but children may believe that the dead retain some biological functions. Death is considered to be something that happens to others, but not thought of as one's own death. Before the age of 5, children understand the 3 basic components of death: irreversibility, definitiveness, and universality. The property and conclusiveness are common, leading to repeated inquiry reiterated about the deceased, where he is, or when she will return. Frequent fears in childhood grief. Childhood bereavement is characterized by 3 common fears. Did I cause the death? Children may feel guilt and responsibility for the death of a loved one, especially if they have had negative thoughts or conflicts with the deceased. Will this happen to me? The death of a loved one can generate fear of one's own death and the loss of other loved ones. Who will take care of me? The loss of a parent can generate insecurity, fear of separation or abandonment. Childhood grief phrases. The grieving process in childhood can be divided into 3 phases. 1. Protests the child now bitterly the deceased parent and cries, pleading for his or her return. 2. Despair. He begins to give up hope that he will return and cries intermittently. May go through the period of apathy, breakdown of bond. Begins to relinquish parts of the emotional bond with the deceased and to show interest in the world around him. Manifestations of grief in children and adolescents. Is it limited or mixed? Manifestations of grief in children and adolescents. The manifestations of childhood grief are varied and are considered normal. Normal. Some of them include shock and confusion. The child may experience shock and confusion at the loss of a loved one. Anger and bewilderment. Anger at having been abandoned. Perplexity at the absence of the deceased. They can manifest in different forms. Regression and ambivalence. The child may experience regression, but such as not adapting to the surviving parent, complaining, failure to control entiteres, or thumb-sucking. He may also show ambivalence by alternating questioning phrases and emotional expressions such as phrases of indifference and silences. Complicated childhood grief. Complicated childhood bereavement is characterized by the persistence of bereavement symptoms throughout childhood. Persistence of grief symptoms over a prolonged period of time, which significantly affecting the child's well-being. Some risk factors include unstable environment, inadequate reactions of the surviving parent, remarriage, loss of the mother for girls under 10, lack of consistency in discipline, change in caregiving figures, serves as a mode for the child, negative relationship with the new figure, loss of the father for adolescent boys, suicide or homicide of the deceased parent. Warning signs of complicated grief. Warning signs of complicated bereavement can be varied. Some of these include frequent crying. The child cries frequently and intensely, and intense crying with no present or apparent cause. Tantrums and aggression. The child exhibits frequent tantrums, verbal or physical aggression, or difficulties in controlling his/her behavior. Apathy and loss of interest. The child shows apathy, loss of interest in activities he/she used to enjoy, or difficulty concentrating. Sleep disturbances. The child has difficulty sleeping, nightmares if he/she wakes up frequently during the night. Well, and here I want to stop for a moment. Because sometimes we are very overprotective, wanting to prevent them from suffering, to make them go through that situation. But we harm them, because sooner or later the child will realize what is happening, the loss. And he or she will feel very bad, very sad, and even more so because he or she could not be there at that moment. I am going to tell you something that happened to me with the loss of my father. When my father passed away, I decided not to see him. I decided to stay with the images and memories of when he was alive, of the happiest moments. And I made a mistake. I made a mistake because I did not see him dead in a coffin. And that made me that when I went out to the street and looked for him among the people who were on the street. They were walking, and I was looking for my father in one of those people. And for a long time, several years, that was what happened to me. that I was looking for my father because I had not seen him. So that overprotection that sometimes we do now is not very good. After the death, it is preferable for the surviving parent to break the bad news. But if this is not possible, it is important to choose an emotionally close person, explain to them gradually and in a few words what has happened, and answer honestly all the questions they ask. Use the word death without hesitation and tell them that everything that lives dies someday. Communication and support. Allow them to see my body if they wish, and it would be appropriate for them to participate in the wake, burial, and funeral. It is important that the child sees him, herself, as one of those who share in the wake at the death of the loved one. Encourage the expression of emotions, empathic communication. The tear jar, a tool for children. The tear jar is a beautiful and useful tool for children. For young children, it helps them to express their emotions and feelings in a creative way. Express emotions with tears. Release sadness. Writing or drawing the cause of their sadness in a tear jar allows them to externalize their emotions. Communication. Children can share their feelings with a trusted adult through tears, validated feelings. The tears show that their emotions are important and that they are not alone. Steps to create the bottle. Expression. Print the bottle and tears on colored paper. They cut out the tears and glue the jar to a poster board or plastic jar. Decorating. Children can decorate the jar with glitter stickers or paint to make it more personal. How to use the tear jar. Writing or drawing. The child writes or draws the cause of their sadness on the tear jar. Sharing feelings. Child can share feelings with a trusted adult. Save the teardrop. Child keeps her tears in the bottle. Bottle. Praying together. The children can pray together to find peace and comfort. Variations for young children. If the child is very young, can draw on the teardrop instead of writing. Adults can help children. Children write their feelings. Benefits of the tear jar. Communication helps children express their emotions in a safe way. Self-awareness promotes emotional self-knowledge and understanding of their own feelings. Relationship strengthens the relationship between the child and adults. Additional resources. Books for children. Find books on emotions for children. Creative activities. Use other creative activities to express emotions. Open-ended conversations. Encourage open conversations about emotions with children. And there are many resources that talk about emotions. So not only can you use the little tear jar, but there's a very wide variety of emotions that you can use with children. Variety of emotions that you can use with children. Conclusion. Useful tool. The tear jar is a useful tool for children. It promotes well-being. It helps children to express their emotions and feel better. Creates a safe space. Creates a safe space for children to share their feelings. God dries all your tears and embraces you with love. God, love, hope, healing, comfort, and strength. I will be with you every day until the end of the world. Matthew 18, from 15 to 19. For children, death is something very complicated, distressing, and if not accompanied, even traumatic. The child needs spiritual guidance before the crisis. The child needs to hear and understand that God is not the cause of illness or death, but that God is not the cause of death. Neither of the death, but that it is a consequence of sin. Neither are they punishments from God. The importance of the grieving process. The child needs to be accompanied throughout the grieving process. This includes the expression of his emotions, the crying child, his pain. It is the child who can receive consolation from others and from God. The child needs spiritual guidance before the crisis. The child needs to hear and understand that God is not the cause of sickness and death, but that it is a consequence of sin. Neither are they God's punishments. God's love that comforts. We should always talk to the sick child about God's love. In this, it is important to reassure him in every possible way that sickness and suffering do not mean that God has ceased to love him. Does not mean that God has stopped loving him. The comfort of being a child of God. A basic way to spiritually strengthen a child facing death is to help him to be assured of his salvation. Talking to him about the peace and security we find in Jesus. And age-appropriate teaching about death, heaven, and eternal life. The comfort of feeling loved. Strengthen a trusting relationship with the child. Demonstrate your love in concrete ways. Illness does not change the reality of God's love. Correct attitudes in dealing with the child. The child needs to be treated with compassion. His sensitivity, responsibility. The teacher who seeks God's presence and wisdom can bring comfort and strength to the life of the child and family. Emotion jar. The following idea you can do either digitally with the children, stick the droplets in the jars, or if you have the possibility to buy a jar for the child to put inside the droplets. It is advisable that the jars can be made of plastic. Well, here are some droplets that they can use to decorate. Here are the teardrops where they can write their feelings. Here are a variety of little bottles that they are to cut out to color. Well, I look forward to seeing them. I hope that it has been a blessing. It is a painful, but we have to be aware that it is a reality. Death is something, just as we are born and we die someday, so it is important for the child to know about death. It is important to talk to them. It is important for us to get to know about it. Sorry that we research, that we study about all this, is so that when the time comes that a child is going through, grief, we can be of help, of support, of consolation for that child, so that we can support, comfort for that child to be able to bring comfort not only to the child, but also to comfort not only to the child, but also to his or her family. That is why it is a subject that we all avoid. It is a subject that is painful, that is sad to face, but as I say, it is a reality that all of us at some point in our lives, we are going to be going through. As we are born, so we die. It is God's law. So it is important to be trained. It is important to keep on investigating and finding out. That is why I thank you. Los Niños Cuentan, the Ministry of Los Niños Cuentan, for having given me this opportunity to bring this little grain of sand so that you can work on it. You can have the material for such a need as it is. Thank you all very much. May the Lord bless you. And again, thank you very much to the Ministry of Los Niños Cuentan.